Melissa woke up confused on more than one level. Confused because she had no idea where she was, and confused because she had no recent memories. She tried opening her eyes, but quickly closed them again. The bright lights hurt. That is why it was her nose that solved the first riddle. It gave her the unmistakable smell of hospital. That solved one problem, although it didn't delay her confusion. With no satisfied, it was the turn of her ears. She recognized the music that was playing. It was the nightly 7 p.m. news. She never missed it. It was a ritual at home, that she and her husband always sat and watched it together. Husband, yes. I have a husband, she thought, even in her confused state. She felt it was strange that whenever she tried to think of his name, her mind slid off it. Try pouring water onto a duck's back or a diamond. Yes, afterwards, there is water everywhere. But the duck or diamond is perfectly dry. Finally, after much effort, she had it. Dave. As soon as she thought of the name, her mind rapidly threw it away as if it was a hot potato. Desperate to distract herself, she focused on the sound that had roused her. The music was gone now. The newsreader was drowning on. She quickly opened and shut her eyes to confirm there was a television on the wall, and then concentrated on her ears. We have received a DVD of his statement, but for legal reasons we can't show it. We can, however, read you excerpts from the transcript. A warning, parts of what follows may be offensive to younger viewers. To my darling wife, I hope my actions of today answer your questions of 3 weeks ago. Can we get past this, and can you forgive me? Clearly my answer is no to both of those. To make the finances easy to understand, let me spell it out to you. I've cancelled our car and medical insurance. I have paid off all the credit cards and cancelled them. I have set up a trust to be the beneficiary of my life insurance, with my lawyer being the trustee. I added to this trust the entire contents of our bank accounts. When everything is settled, he has instructions to distribute everything to some nominated charities. Yes, I know this leaves the children with no inheritance, but they have finished their education, and I have given them the best possible start in life. I have no doubt they will be successful, and my conscience is clear. I've written to them all, explained my actions, and begged their forgiveness. No, I didn't leave out one brutal detail. I suggested that they take the example of your life from now as a lesson in why you should respect your loved ones. It is my second last lesson to them. I really wish I could be around to see how your life progresses. How will you explain yourself to our children, our friends, and the children of our friends? But by now you realize that is impossible for me to be there. For the record, I'm not doing this because I am suffering from depression or anything like that. In fact, anyone analyzing my actions will see them as the product of an obviously sane and rational mind. Not that I didn't have a reason to be pushed into insanity. It is bad enough to catch your wife in bed with another man. But when she reacts by asking you to leave so they can continue, well, that could push even the strongest man over the edge. At this point, even Melissa couldn't delude herself that the words coming from the newsreader weren't aimed directly at her. She desperately forced her mind away from sensory input, but that backfired. When her memory threw up visions of the incident in question, Dave had missed the monthly party of their close friend group. He was supposed to be covering the afternoon shift at the mine. She found out later that the shaft hoist had broken down, and without a second means of egress from underground, work was prohibited. The group of 9 couples had known each other for years and were all about the same stage in life, either childless or empty nesters. This month, Susan and Carl were the rotated hosts. From later research, Dave had entered the party and immediately inquired where Melissa was. Some had genuinely not known Others made excuses. Susan told him his wife wasn't there. It was Graham who gave the game away. He always was a terrible liar. He stammered out that he was ignorant of her whereabouts. But Dave didn't miss his eyes flicking up the stairs. 3 people had apparently tried to stop Dave's ascent, but to no avail when he burst through the bedroom door. To see Carl being intimate with her. That didn't stop her from opening her eyes to see her husband. Over Carl's shoulder, she had been holding off her excitement, as she knew from experience that Carl was close. In all their time together, they had never had simultaneous bursts, and it was a goal of hers. It is often said that the closest to sane person can get to insanity is in the moments before it. That is the only way Melissa could rationalize why she simply panted, "Go away," and shut her eyes in concentration. The moment for her was spoiled. However, her excitement was ruined. Carl was blissfully ignorant of the exchange, until well after he'd finished. In mounting horror, he had joined Melissa in getting dressed and racing out to find Dave. He was gone. With this particular mental scene over, Melissa couldn't help her attention returning to the television, to the media. "Can I suggest you use this opportunity for some public service? You could follow my ex-wife and the others involved around for years to see the long-term effect on them. Hopefully, if it is brutal and pathetic enough, you could keep the lessons fresh in everyone's mind for a long time to come. A constant reminder of the potential consequences of disrespect. That is, unless the pond jerk takes the easy way out. I can't see that happening, though. Surely she can recognize the damage losing one parent will do, and not want to compound it by the children losing both. Maybe the media can do a show on the socially correct way of ending a marriage as a counterpoint to the people that make the laws in this country. I know we changed to no-fault divorces for reasons that seemed valid at the time, but surely it is time for a review. We now have data on the consequences of both, the old and the new systems. Surely an independent review will spell out the wise way forward. Old new, or a third path off the cuff? Can I make a suggestion? Maybe keep no fault for couples with dependent children, but go back to the old system for couples without. Resurrect the system where cheaters are punished. All we have done with no fault is create an environment where, if the primary caregiver murders their spouses, love and trust, they either end up with no consequences or are actually rewarded. That's exactly what it seemed like when my lawyer told me I would end up with less than half my assets, as a reward for a lifetime of fidelity and a career of risking my safety and health to provide a superior lifestyle for the cheating woman. One request, though, wise ones, make sure the review isn't influenced by the hairy armpit Bull Dyke Brigade that seems to have an unhealthy control over our laws and is steadily advancing the cause of male subjugation. Also exclude those pansy, liberal metrosexual bend down and take it like a man, so-called males that help the dykes. As a last note to the lawmakers, if you keep allowing farmers to feed hormones to the animals we eat, then be prepared to have a society where gender confusion increases. Once again, Melissa's mind desperately tried to wander away from this horrible diatribe by reliving the past. After the party, Dave had disappeared for a few days, completely baffling all of her and Carl's attempts to find him. She felt no guilt about what she had done. It was all perfectly justifiable. Of course, she regretted the way Dave had discovered them, but that wasn't her fault. When he reappeared, she was quite prepared to be verbally torn to shreds. It was the medicine she knew she had to swallow. Instead, she was quite shocked by the hollow, lifeless hulk that appeared back in her life. Having had 4 days of peace to coordinate her defense, she launched it, explaining that after Susan's women's problems of 3 years ago, She'd lost the ability to enjoy love with Carl for his sake. She'd still lay down whenever he requested, but her lack of interest was soon apparent. And that completely put Carl off his stride. Surely Dave could understand why. When Carl and Susan explained their marital problems, she saw it as her duty as a friend to help them out. 2 or 3 times a month. Couldn't he see she showed her respect for her husband by making sure his own marital life had not suffered? Of course. This inevitably meant that Dave occasionally got sloppy seconds. She just couldn't bring herself to refuse him on days she'd been with Carl. After all, if she did that, it would be affecting their marital love life. She had further shown her respect for him by not letting him go down on her Carl days. That was fine after all. It was her missing out, not him. Couldn't he see she protected him by being discreet? In the whole 3 years, only 3 other couples in their friend group knew about the whole affair and had to be sworn to secrecy. Melissa had simply beamed with pride when delivering this snippet. After all, Dave wouldn't want all his friends to think his wife was a cheating woman. Would he finally? Couldn't he see why Susan, Carl and she had kept it from him? After being married for so long, she knew her husband as well as herself. She knew his pride would find it extremely difficult to allow him to share her with another man, so she had skillfully saved him that angst by keeping it secret. All these justifications had been pre-prepared before the party, the one that took the whole 4 days of Dave's absence to justify, was her response on being caught. In hindsight, her statement of "go away" could have been misinterpreted as indifference. In the end, her justification was that she had been caught up in the moment. In addition, imagine if the tables were turned. Put in Carl's place, would Dave have welcomed his excitement being totally ruined? At the end of all this, she realized David wasn't impressed. In fact, he showed no reaction at all. Feeling remorse, this was when she'd asked him to forgive her and hoped they could get over it. There was never any doubt in her mind that it was only a matter of time and patience. Over the next 3 weeks, she gave him the space to come to terms with it in his own time. They never spoke of it again, but she was relieved that he was almost back to normal, except for the strange look in his eye. In hindsight, it was as if the pilot light had gone out. He was obviously still processing things, as he hardly spent any time with her, but worked on his projects. In the garage, Melissa could hear his cement mixer humming away at all hours. It never occurred to her to ask why there was never any fresh concrete. Over that time, the phone had rung hot. The couples in the know worried about Dave and Mel's marriage. The previously ignorant couples pumped her for information, feeling bad for how it might look to the uninformed. She had bent the truth slightly. She told them that Dave was fully aware of the arrangement with Carl and Susan, but had requested that she abstain that weekend, as it was their anniversary. She apologized that she had dishonored that request and that their friends had to witness Dave's subsequent anger. Carl constantly asked Melissa if Dave was ready for him to apologize, yet Melissa advised him to hold off. With no intimacy from Dave, Melissa got Susan's blessing to increase her visits to Carl's bed to once a week, at least 3 weeks after the event. Melissa started putting pressure on Dave about the monthly party. It was their turn to host it. It was also time for them to show their friends that everything was back to normal and their friendship group could continue uninterrupted. She stressed that it was unfair for some of their friends to still be uncomfortable over events that had nothing to do with them. That was the first time she saw any sort of emotional reaction from Dave. He showed some excitement, Melissa remembered, being relieved that he was finally ready to move on. The dates of their parties were set in stone, the last Saturday of every month. That was why it was unusual when 2 of the couples declined to come. citing previous engagements. It was a relief to Melissa that both fell into the previously ignorant category. No worries, fewer people to continue stretching the truth to. Everyone else came, though, and the party started off very well. 30 minutes later, one of the other previously ignorant couples left, saying something had come up. 20 minutes later, they were followed by a second. Suspicious Melissa had kept a closer eye on the interactions between the remaining people. The mood in the house was noticeably quieter, which wasn't fully explained by the dwindling population. She watched Dave talking to Jenny and Frank from across the room. Being very perceptive, she saw the intense look on Dave's face and the downcast look on the faces of both his companions. Shaking his head, Dave moved on. Curious, Melissa followed him as he moved to Sandra and Bob. Again, the intense look from Dave. This time there were no downcast eyes, but vigorous shaking of heads and animated conversation. 5 minutes later, Sandra bid Melissa good night, and the couple left. To say Melissa was angry was an understatement. What right did David have to alienate their friends? She decided to give him a piece of her mind. She stormed into the kitchen to confront him. Carl, seeing the look of thunder on her face, followed her, disobeying her instructions. To stay the hell away from David. What the hell are you doing upsetting our friends? Can't you see you're embarrassing me? I'm sorry, dear. Just finding out who the innocent parties were and who the conspirators were. Carl, welcome. I'm glad you're both here. In the spirit of fair play and in respect for our years of friendship, I must tell you that I am now going to the basement to retrieve my pistol from the safe. When I return, I will be shooting you both dead. With that, Dave turned and slipped out of the room. Carl tried to grab his arm, but Melissa held him back. Come on, Carl. Let's get out of here. You're not serious, Mel. He won't do it. He's just trying to get some payback by scaring us, replied Carl. You didn't see his eyes, Carl? Dave has green eyes. That thing had black eyes. They were the eyes of a monster. I think we created that monster. We have to get out of here now. What about Susan? He asked. Leave her, she's safe. It's us at once. That was all Melissa remembered for the moment. With no more action replays, her attention returned to the television. To all the family and friends of people who called themselves my friends, but failed to alert me to what my darling wife was up to. My profound apologies. I hope I have sent a message to our society that this unacceptable behavior should be punished. With the media's help, this lesson could last for years. If nothing else, these loathsome creatures have been expunged from the gene pool. Finally, to my former friend Carl. 35 days after me, you are going to learn the same lesson I did. That the one thing far worse than death is to abruptly lose the person you have loved unconditionally for so long, to have your heart torn from your chest and peed on while it is still beating. As I said to your cheating woman, good luck trying to explain the loss of their mother to your children, knowing in your heart that they believe it was all your fault. Your children can share in the last lesson I am giving mine. Seeing how a real man dies, and good luck explaining it to all your other family and friends. I think history may judge that Susan got off lightly. Worse than death is a life spent regretting the suffering you have caused to so many. Goodbye, my friend. I'll see you in hell. Melissa lapsed into unconsciousness again, her mind vivid with suppressed memories of her dragging Carl out of the front door and hearing the deadlock click behind her, of reaching the other side of the street where she briefly glanced over her shoulder to see Dave looking out the window at her. I've continued to run until the enormous explosion threw Carl and herself to the ground. How just before she lost consciousness from the concussive blast wave, she instinctively dragged Carl under a truck. To avoid the falling debris, the remembered pain woke her again. Now back to today's top story. A house in Mort Crater was destroyed today in an enormous explosion. 2 people outside the house were injured, but are reported in satisfactory condition. A police spokesman said it was believed at least 8 people were present in the house and are feared dead. This station has determined that the house belonged to David Brown, a shot fire at the local mine. More details will be released later. Melissa lapsed into blessed unconsciousness again, but those flashbacks just wouldn't leave her dreams. She remembered Dave telling her once about the most common explosive he used at work. It was simply a mixture of a common garden fertilizer and petrol, or kerosene, or some type of fuel. She'd asked him if it was easy to make, and he'd replied it was simple. You just had to thoroughly mix them somehow. Say in a cement mixer, then get a detonator and booster to set them off. Finally, as a merciful cloak of darkness descended over Melissa, one last collage of despair played across her memory. In the shattered remnant of her mind, she saw again Dave standing at the window of their house. In his left hand, a small yellow box from which wires dangled. Behind him appeared 7 worried faces, sharing their glances between the box and Dave's hand and the fleeing couple out the window. In her mind's eye, she saw Dave's green eyes shining as his face crinkled in a smile. She watched in slow motion as he raised the box in one hand and pressed the button with the other. 2 months later, tonight on 10 in our regular public information segment, we were going to bring you an update on Carl Weston, the lover in the infamous Brown Weston tragedy. Unfortunately, due to his tragic suicide this week, we won't be able to. Instead, we will be bringing you an interview with Dora Smith, eldest daughter of Janet and Graham Smith, one of the couples who died in the Mort Crater explosion. Then, we'll be bringing you an update on the speed of confession stories, divorces and requests for counseling services flooding the country. The ACP reports the current waiting list for marriage counseling services has blown out to 3 months. Stay tuned. And so we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day. So click that subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.